Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyav Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantirame Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the exhaustion in our body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. So we'll continue to study the nature of the self, the Atman, and today we begin with verse number 125. Asti kaschit swayam nityam aham pratyaya lambanaha avasthatrayasakshi san panchakosha vilakshanaha. There is someone independent, eternal, on whom the ego is projected, who is the witness of the three states and distinct from the five layers. This someone that is being described here is the Atman, the true self within us, the real me. So what is the description of this real me? This verse says, is someone who is independent. The Sanskrit word here is swayam. Being eternal, nityam, that's the other one. Independent and eternal. Now, when we say anything is eternal and anything is infinite, there can be only one infinite. Because if you have even one thing other than that infinite, it will limit the first one. So the infinite can only be one. Where there is no even time, because the presence of time as an independent entity will also limit the infinite. And because there is no time, the infinite is necessarily also eternal. And being one, it's also not affected by anything. We know that the body is affected. Well, for little more than 2 years now, besides the other things it's being affected all through, we have an additional virus that's causing havoc everywhere. That is because the body is finite, therefore something can exist outside it, and that outside entity can affect it, favorably or adversely. But the Atman is one and is infinite. There is nothing and no one apart from the Atman. Therefore, nothing and no one can affect the Atman. And therefore, it's truly independent. On whom the ego is projected. We of course, nowadays, different with digital technologies, the way of even seeing movies or anything is changed. But if you go to the classical ways, when there was a film and there was a light passing through it and it used to be projected onto a screen. We know that before the movie is projected, the screen is there. The screen is present during the movie, and the screen will continue to be there after the movie ends. The screen remains completely unchanged during the process. It's only when the movie starts and it ends, we see some movement there. So that is the idea. The ego is projected really means the Atman is always present, unchanging, eternal, infinite. And just like the movie, the ego is projected there for a short time. The I that all of us experience right now is not the real me. The real me is the screen. The I that we experience right now is the ego that is being projected onto me, the real me, the Atman. Therefore, if we must use a phrase that I like will be, the Atman is a me beyond the me. So right now, every one of us has the feeling of being someone. So the real me is the me beyond this me. So, and it's important because the literal translation of the Atman simply means the self. And we use this word self all the time. Myself, yourself. So that self, which is attached to myself and yourself and all, that is not the real me. That's the projected me. The real me is beyond that ego. So that is what is meant by saying on whom the ego is projected, just like in the classical rope snake analogy, the snake is projected on the rope. And the snake vanishes when the light is switched on. This ego vanishes when the light of knowledge is switched on. And this Atman is the witness of the three states and distinct from the five layers. We have spoken of this many times and will continue to speak about it in future as well. The three states are the waking, the dream, and deep sleep, called in Sanskrit Jagrat, Swapna, and Sushupti. And the five layers are often called the five koshas. You can see in the note to the book, they are the Annamaya kosha, literally Anna is food, so that's the layer of the body. Pranamaya kosha, the layer of the life force. Manomaya kosha, the layer of the mind. Vijnanamaya kosha, literally knowledge. But here it means the ego as the doer. And finally, Anandamaya kosha. Ananda means bliss. Literal meaning is bliss, but this is the layer of the experiencer ego. So the ego has two functions called karta and bhokta. Karta means a doer of action. Bhokta means an experiencer of action. And we have both of these. We do activities and we have the sense, I am doing them. We also experience joy and sorrow in life. And when joy and sorrow comes in our life, we have the sense, I am experiencing happiness. I am experiencing suffering. So this me as a doer of action and me as the experiencer, both of these are different aspects of the same ego function. So these form the five layers or the five koshas. So the Atman is independent, eternal, on whom the ego is projected, who is the witness of the three states and distinct from the five layers. In the subsequent verses also, we'll have more ways of describing the Atman. Not all of them are completely new. You'll find a few repetitions there. But repetitions are good because of our natural tendency to keep on forgetting. So we need to be reminded again and again and again. When you read the Gospel of Ramakrishna, you will see some stories are repeated so often. Many teachings are repeated often. And that's because those are the kind of things, oftentimes very simple things, oftentimes very obvious things, but those are the things we tend to forget. Normally in Vedic study, repetition is considered a defect. That is, if someone is writing an academic paper or a scholarly paper, and you keep on repeating the same idea over and over and over again, then that's a weakness in that paper. Once you have said something, you don't have to keep on saying it again and again. Now in the Vedas, we find a lot of repetition. And so the commentators specially draw our attention to that repetition and says, this is not a weakness. This is not that the rishis, the sages to whom these revelations came, that these repetitions in the Vedas are there for our good. Because we keep on, it's just like parents. You know sometimes that children, you keep on telling them the same thing over and over again. Study hard, do this, do that. And sometimes children, when they get irritated, especially parents of teenagers know this well. They say, Mom, Dad, how many times will you tell me the same thing? It's not as if parents don't know that they have told that thing before, but you keep on telling it again and again because you love your children, your grandchildren. You want them to imbibe those ideas. So even when they get annoyed, you still keep on telling them because you love them. And Shankaracharya says in his commentary that the Upanishads are like 1,000 mothers put together. And they love us, and they know that we are forgetful. That's why they'll keep on repeating these ideas over and over again. That's why you will find some of these adjectives appearing again and again throughout this book. Let's go to the next verse. Yo vijanati sakalam jagrat swapna sushuptishu buddhi tad vritti sad bhavam abhavam mahamityayam. There is someone who is aware of the presence and absence of the mind's activity and of everything that occurs in the states of waking, dream, and deep sleep. This is that. You'll find a series of verses like this. There is someone, and we know that this section dealing with the Atman, so that someone is the Atman. Now all knowledge, all knowing things, grasping things, understanding things, interpreting them, remembering them, all of this occurs in the states of waking and dream. In the state of deep sleep, not knowing occurs in deep sleep. So just as we are aware of the presence of things in the waking and dream states, we are aware of the absence of things in the deep sleep state. And because we are aware of the absence of everything in the deep sleep state, next morning we wake up after a good sleep and we say, I did not know anything. I slept so well, I knew nothing. So awareness was present even in deep sleep, experiencing that nothing, which is what it remembers the next morning. So that is what is said here. Who is aware of the presence and absence of the mind's activity. Presence in waking and dream, absence in deep sleep. And that's someone who never sleeps. The body sleeps, and then we have dream. The body and the mind both sleep, and we have the deep sleep. But the Atman never sleeps. And relatively speaking, we might say, if we wake up next morning and are still in our same bed where we were, that means the heart also didn't sleep last night. So yes, relatively speaking, the heart never sleeps. But from a deeper state, everything that is material will stop functioning one day. The Atman is the only non-material presence that never sleeps, that never stops. Verse 127. Yap pashyati swayam sarvam yam na pashyati kaschana yaschetayati buddhyadi na tad yam chetayatyayam. There is someone who sees everything but who is not seen by anyone, who illumines the mind, etc., but whom they cannot illumine. This is that. So this verse describes the nature of the Atman as consciousness, a consciousness that is not the object of knowledge, but the witness of everything. In other words, we need consciousness to be aware of the world, of aware of anything around us. But we do not need another consciousness to become aware of this consciousness. It's a little bit like we need light to see things that are in the dark. But then we say, well, we need light to see things in the dark, but how do we see the light? We cannot say, well, I need to get now another light to see this light. So this light illumines itself and also illumines everything else. So similarly, Atman as consciousness is conscious of itself and also conscious of everything around it. Just as light can exist even if there is nothing else to illumine, the sun does not depend on things outside it to illuminate. Whether there are things or not, the sun will shine. Similarly, it's the nature of the Atman to be conscious. It is consciousness itself. If there is anything outside to see, it will reveal it. If there is nothing, it's just there. Because that consciousness will not go away just because, oh, there is nothing to see. What's my use? Let me just quit. It doesn't do that. So that's the idea. That who sees everything, but who is not seen by anyone. And that is why the scriptures say that the Atman cannot be revealed by the mind, cannot be revealed by the senses, cannot be revealed by anything. Because right now, all of our knowledge is really objectification. People say seeing is believing. And any activity really is objectification. That is, if I want to know what this object is, then there is, I'm the subject, I'm the one who's seeing it, this is the object, and what connects me with this object is the act of seeing, the action of seeing. So in everything that we do in this world, there is the subject, there is the object, and there is the activity or action connecting the two. So with the help of the Atman, we are aware of the world. And the next question would be, how do we become aware of the Atman? At present, all of our knowledge is objectification. We might think, therefore, that in order to know the Atman, I'll have to see the Atman. But in order to see something with these physical eyes, I have to objectify it. And I'm never going to see the Atman that way. It's almost like saying, if someone is a strong person, they can lift heavy weights. That's easy to do because the weights are different from you. But no matter how strong a person they may be, they cannot lift themselves. Because the subject and object become one and the same, no activity is possible there. So that is what is meant by saying that the Atman sees everything. Now, what does it mean to say the Atman sees everything? The Atman by itself cannot see anything really. The Atman will always need an instrument through which perception occurs. So when it says it sees everything, what is meant is, because of its presence, we are able to see things with the help of the mind and the senses. And that's clear. If a person is unconscious, when they are asleep, or if they are dead, the body is there, the senses are there, they can't see anything. So consciousness is necessary, but the instruments are also necessary. The instruments by themselves cannot see anything. The Atman by itself has no need to see anything. But if the Atman has to become aware of anything outside of itself, it will need those instruments. That's why the second part says, who illumines the mind, etc., but whom they cannot illumine. Now what does it mean? The Atman illumines the mind. What it means is that by its very presence, the Atman makes it appear as if the mind is conscious, as if the body is conscious. We feel, oh, I'm a conscious person. And when we use the word person, we're really thinking about our body and mind. The consciousness that is manifesting or showing itself through our body and mind does not belong to the body and mind. That comes from the Atman. It's like this light that we see. Now, you can just go and buy a few bulbs from the market. Now, the bulb themselves you put anywhere, they won't give any light. In order to get light from these bulbs, you have to fix them to the mains, and it's the power, electric power, that makes this light possible. Now, electricity by itself cannot illumine anything. The bulbs by themselves can't illumine anything. But in order for light to come, the bulbs have to be connected to the electricity power. This is a little bit like that. That just as this light doesn't belong to the bulb, consciousness does not belong to the body and mind. The real power is the Atman, the source of consciousness. And whom they cannot illumine means we cannot see the Atman with the help of the body and mind. Nor, secondly, the Atman doesn't need anything to illumine itself, just as a light does not need another light to illumine itself. That's the idea. Verse 128. Yena vishvamidam vyaptam yam na vyapnoti kinchana abharupamidam sarvam yam bhantam anubhatyayam. There is someone who pervades this universe, but nothing pervades it, whose shining precedes the experience of this material universe. Pervades here means is connected with. Since everything that we see, everything that we know is an object of consciousness, it's almost like everything is connected with our consciousness. In fact, if we see the psychology of perception as it is seen in Vedanta and other Eastern traditions, what they say is this. I mean, the modern way, the kind of science we have studied in schools would be, because it does believe in multiplicity and objective reality, normally we think about seeing any object. For instance, if I have to see this object, there is light falling on this. This light goes inside my eyes, falls a reflection on the retina, goes to the optic nerve, the brain interprets it, and then I'm able to see it. That's how we generally describe the act of perception. Now, from a deeper way, the Eastern way of perception is really, whenever there is an object, the mind, and it's going to sound odd, so I'm warning you in advance. A mind, the antakarana, actually goes out and covers this object, takes the shape of this object, and removes the ignorance associated with this object. Now, along with that movement of the antakarana, consciousness, chaitanya, also goes along with it. And it's that consciousness which reveals what it is. So it's really actually the mind taking the form of every object that it sees. Now, here I'm showing you a physical object, but really the word form is understood in a much deeper way. Even when I hear the sound, the antakarana is actually going out through the senses, the hearing sense, and covering the form of that sound. So you see the word form is in a very abstract way. And then that sound becomes audible to me. So all of this knowledge that comes to us comes through this mind going out. The word that is used is called vritti in Sanskrit. It's almost like a wave, a thought wave, if you like. So that's why who pervades this universe really means everything in this universe is pervaded by consciousness. Means as soon as it becomes an object of my awareness, consciousness gets connected with every object, every entity. But nothing pervades it because consciousness is infinite. And no matter how huge this physical, material universe might be, compared to the infinitude of the Atman, it's still only a small part of it. In the Vedas, there are passages which say that all of this material universe, with all of these galaxies that we know of and the galaxies that we may still not know of, are still only one little part. Ekam shena sthitam jagat. Eka amsha. It's only a small little part of this infinite being. And therefore, nothing can pervade the Atman, whose shining precedes the experience of the material universe. This is important to understand. We often speak about the sun being the source of light. What this points out, and there are several passages in the Upanishads that can be referred to here, is that even the sun needs consciousness in order for its light to be visible. For instance, suppose we sleep late in the morning, and I'm sure none of you do that. So if we wake up long after the sun has risen, but if you're still asleep, you're not seeing the sun. So if the light of the sun were, how to put it? Let me put it this way. The sun is helpless if I'm still asleep. The sun cannot illumine my world if I'm still asleep. In order for sun to become real, the light of the sun to be experienced by me, I need to wake up. And when I wake up and I see the sun, I become aware of the sun, then it begins to illumine my world. So even sun's light depends on my being conscious of it. If I'm not conscious of the sun, I'm still in darkness. So that is what is meant by saying, whose shining precedes the experience of this material universe. If I'm not awake, I will not experience the world. And therefore, and we don't generally think about it this way because we kind of assume that's how things are. The idea that the world was existing even when I'm asleep is only an inference. It's only a hope. We don't know. We don't know if the world existed when we were asleep. So sometimes when we just kind of swear by science and say science just believes in proof, believes in evidence, a simple question would be, what evidence is there that the world existed when I was asleep? And of course, someone might say, well, I was asleep, my friend was awake, and my friend experienced it, so I trust my friend. But still, it's not my experience. I am then believing in someone else's testimony to then have this firm conviction that the world existed when I was asleep. So if that's okay to accept the testimony of my friend that the world existed when I was asleep, why can I not accept the testimony of many of these enlightened beings who say, God is there, God exists, I have experienced God? So you see how inconsistent we can be in our thinking. A lot of time, the experience of spiritual illumination is not accepted by materialistic sciences. They're saying there is no evidence, there is no proof. Well, there is proof. Here is the testimony of these people who are experienced. Say, no, we don't believe. We must see it for ourselves. But if I must see it for myself, I haven't seen the world exist when I was asleep. So these are the kind of anomalies we find and we need to be aware of. Verse 129. Yasya sannidhi matrena dehendriyamanodhiyah vishayeshu swakiyeshu vartante prerita iva. There is someone whose mere proximity seems to direct the body, the senses, the mind, and the intellect toward their objects. This is that. Mere proximity, the word is sannidhi matrena, which really means what consciousness does is it provides an identity. And the ego, which kind of becomes the controller or the moderator of all activities. Because material things cannot self-direct. Now, clearly, all of this philosophizing that we are doing is from a very human standpoint. The books are written by human beings, and we are all human beings. We don't know what the tables and chairs think about us, if they think at all. But from our perspective, a table doesn't think, but we are the great thinking beings, thinking conscious beings. And so from our perspective, we don't see, unless you go to see a Disney movie or something, tables and chairs don't just go here and there. But if something has this ego and identity, like all of us, we have a sense of I. We have a sense that we are conscious beings. We have a sense that we can choose to do what we want. So all those, whose mere proximity seems to direct the body, the senses, and the mind. So the activities that we do through our body, mind, senses, the body, mind, senses won't be able to do anything unless there was someone who was directing them. And that someone, in a superficial way right now, is the sense of I. But that I, as we saw in an earlier verse, is the projected I onto this real me. So that real me, the proximity of that real me, the contact with that consciousness makes it possible for the body, mind, senses to do their activities. Without that proximity, without that connection, the body, mind don't do anything. So when a person dies, the body doesn't disappear. The body is still there until it's cremated or buried. But just because the body is there, that dead body cannot do anything, cannot self-direct, because the contact with consciousness has ended. So that is what is being pointed here. Verse 130. Ahankārādi dehāntā vishayāscha sukhādayah vedyante ghatavat yena nitya bodha swarupina. Everything ranging from the ego to the body, as well as the experience of happiness, etc., are perceived as an object by this whose nature is eternal consciousness. This is the most important thing, that everything that we see and experience in this world is an object of our perception. The only subject is the Atman. So right now, we might say my body, mind, senses are the subject, this world is the object. But I can also look at my body, then the body becomes the object, and the mind becomes the subject. There is this great book called Drik Drishya Viveka, the distinction between the seer and the seen, that has a set of verses which show how the subject-object relationship is developed. And so everything in this, whatever we experience in this world, is an object of our perception, including the body, including the mind, including the ego. That's the most difficult thing to figure out. It's not so difficult to understand the body is an object of my perception. I can see my body. I can experience the movement in my mind. But even my I, even my ego, is an object. I am not my ego. I am beyond my ego. That's the idea. And the only eternal subject is this consciousness. And because it is eternal, because it doesn't follow the laws of matter, it is beyond time. Verse 131. Eshontaraatma purushah purano nirantara khanda sukhanubhutihi sadaika rupa pratibodhamatro yene shita vagasavascharanti. This indwelling being is the inner self, ancient, of the nature of continuous and infinite bliss, ever the same, present in every experience, and whose ruling makes speech and other senses do their functions. Antaratma Purushaha, indwelling being. Now, when you say indwelling being, what it really means is dwelling inside. But dwelling inside what? So here what we are seeing is, at present, we think of this as me. So this is with concession to our present understanding of who we are. The Atman is said to be indwelling. Because think about it. The Atman is infinite. Atman is everywhere. While this poor little body is so little. So the Atman really cannot be inside. But because we think of ourselves, our whole self right now as this, therefore, we tend to think of there is a mind inside me, there is the Atman inside me. But this inside me is only provisional, because really, I am the Atman. And therefore, if we want to be very accurate with our knowledge, with our language, we have to say everything is outside me. And really, Atman is infinite. What it finally ends up being is there is nothing other than the Atman. The other adjective used there is ancient, Purana. In Shankaracharya's commentary, he explains the word Purana as Pura api nava iva, means it is ancient because it is not bound by time. It is birthless. It didn't start at any point. But because it has been there all along, we speak about it as Purana, which literally translated would mean ancient, but nava iva. That means it is old or it's ancient, but as if new every moment. Because things that are subject to the domain of time will get older with time. But this is not subject to time. Therefore, it's ancient, but it never gets old. That's the idea. Nirantara akhanda sukha, continuous and infinite bliss. Yes, we have bliss even now in our present state. It's not continuous and it's not infinite. So, if we are happy with our present occasional bliss, which is a little bit here and there, then we don't have to worry about infinite bliss. But if we find, no, I'm not satisfied. Well, people are dissatisfied with so many things. But a person who is spiritually oriented can redirect their dissatisfactions, their frustrations, rather than saying that, I need this, I need that, and we can spend our entire lives thinking about what we lack and what we want and what we need to do and why we don't get it. But we can redirect that dissatisfaction, that frustration, instead to saying, no matter what I do, not just me as a person, no matter what human beings have done today or in history, nothing ever has made people completely happy and at peace with just pursuit of material things. The only people we find totally at peace, totally free, are people who sought that truth which is beyond time, beyond this finite material world. So this continuous and infinite bliss can come only from that. Ever the same, sada eka rupaha. The nature of the world is continuously changing. Nothing remains constant. They say at the quantum level, at the microscopic level, even our bodies don't remain same. Our body is continually exchanging material with the world. Of course, our eyes are not powerful enough to see how at this quantum level things are continually added and subtracted from our body. So it's continuously changing. This word samsara literally really means that which is continuously moving, continuously changing. The only unchanging entity is this Atman, the true self. And finally, pratibodha matra, which means present in every experience. Because, as I said before, no experience is possible without consciousness. There is this practice of mindfulness or vipassana, which is very helpful. Many people have found it very beneficial. So being mindful of everything that I'm doing, it does help to calm the mind down. But we need not just be happy and satisfied with that experience of peace and calmness that comes as a result of practicing mindfulness. It's great. It's very helpful. We all should be mindful. In fact, that teaching about mindfulness was first given in the Kena Upanishad. The same phrase is used there. Pratibodha viditam matam. Pratibodha. Every point of awareness. That's the idea. So we have to be aware every moment. Now, the first part of that awareness is aware of every action, every thought. And when I do it with awareness, it calms everything down. Now, once that calmness is experienced, once that peace is experienced, next we need to do is to be mindful of the consciousness that is present in every activity. That's the next step. A lot of people just stop with that, oh, I just feel so peaceful and calm because now I'm aware of every activity. But awareness of activity itself is not the goal of life. What we need is to recognize behind every activity, behind every thought, is this consciousness that is present. So the mind can become so still, and then with that still mind, you become aware of the consciousness that is present in every experience. That is what is mentioned here. Present in every experience, and whose ruling makes speech and other senses do their functions. And we know this idea has come up in the earlier verses as well. So we'll stop here today at verse 131. You have any thoughts, ideas, comments, questions, feel free to ask. Yeah.
Hari Om Swamiji. Swamiji, when dreams feel so real, how do we know that this waking state is real?
It's not. That's exactly what the Upanishads say. So in the beginning, we might describe the three states as waking, dream, and deep sleep. But as we advance in our practice, the higher teaching is, there is an Upanishad called the Aitareya Upanishad, which says, Tatra Trayaswapnaha, there are three kinds of dreams: the waking dream, the dream, and the deep sleep dream. So really, the preliminary teaching is make all the distinction you want between waking, dream, and deep sleep. But from a higher perspective, all the three are dreams. If dreams are understood as seeing something that is not there, but that's what a dream is, right? Which is why we wake up in the morning and say it's just a dream, because it didn't really exist. But this doesn't really exist too, because Atman alone exists. So this is a dream too. So Sushupti is also a dream. Swapna is of course a dream. Waking is a dream. We can extend this to saying, if someone feels they have gone to heaven or hell after death, that's a heaven dream. It's a hell dream. If someone feels they are reborn, that is a Punarjanma dream. Just like every night, we don't generally see only one dream. We see actually several dreams. And it's almost like, nowadays I know very few people use this slate and a chalk to write. When we were little in India, we sometimes, I used it when I was in a school. So it was easy. You could write whatever you want, and then you just wipe it clean, and then you write again. Nowadays, of course, there's lots of paper and lots of trees are being cut also for that. Of course, nowadays, because with digital technology, it's easy to delete stuff also. But think about it that way, that you I mean, just forget about this slate and chalk. Just think about you have just one document on your computer, and you just delete it, trash it, and nothing is saved on your hard drive also. Then you won't remember it, what it had. So the mind, the several dreams that we see, it's almost like you see something, then it's wiped clean. Then you see another thing, it's wiped clean. That's why we don't remember our last birth. Everything seems to be wiped clean. Usually, if at all we remember our dreams, it's usually the last dream we see before waking up. That's how it is. And so, just as we see more than one dream, it's possible to look upon our entire existence as just a series of dreams. Life after life after life, we are continuously dreaming. The only way the dreams can end is when we wake up. Otherwise, they'll just go on and on and on and on. And the word for waking up is being a Buddha. Buddha means becoming aware. And that's when the great Buddha, whose birthday we celebrated a few days ago, when his body was on the deathbed, he was about to die. His disciples around were grieving. Their great, much loved teacher was about to pass away. And Buddha looked at them and smiled, and he said, Buddha is not a person. Buddha is a state, and everyone can attain that state. So we are continuously dreaming. This study that we are doing now, this is another dream. If you start practicing according to this, that will be another dream. And when you become enlightened, then you would have waken up. Once you wake up, everything will be wiped clean. And that's fine. You don't need to remember the book. You don't need to remember anything once you wake up. But it's this study, this practice, that will help us wake up. Because if we don't do it, we're just going to move from one dream to another. That's the idea. Yeah. Yeah, come here, come here.
Joy Ma, you have said when the consciousness that
little louder.
Yeah. The Atman is unaffected by mind or by the body, and it is outside the body, right? Now, when the body, Atman, we are thinking, it is inside. When the person is dead, it is some energy is going outside the body, and that time that energy can see his body or her body. It is my body. Now I am living, and I am going from one dream to another dream.
Okay, yeah, please sit down. The Atman is not. I didn't say it's outside the body. I'm just saying that everything is outside the Atman. What goes anywhere after death is the subtle body, the Sukshma Sharira. Death is death only of the gross body, the external body. And this was discussed in the earlier part of the book. So the Atman, being infinite, doesn't go anywhere. But because the Atman is in ignorance, because the Atman has gotten identified with this limited body, it feels as if it is going from one place to another. When that ignorance goes away, the Atman will know that it is infinite and it won't go anywhere. That's the idea. Well, there is no here. Everything is here. Yeah. Because there is no there. That's the idea.
That means,
you can keep your mask on. That's fine.
Swamiji, that means Atman is not consciousness also then.
No, Atman is consciousness. I think because I think you haven't studied the earlier part, which was discussed before, Atman is consciousness. Yes, it's pure consciousness.
So it is only present in the subtle form.
Please come near the thing. Yeah.
Then it is only exist in the subtle form, and we have to make some actions or practice to make it awake.
No, I think what I would recommend is you please go through this book, the first part of this book, and then it will become clear. Because now we are already in verse 131, and because you are not aware of what was studied before, that is why these kind of questions might come. But if you read the earlier portion, I think it will become clearer to you. Okay? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay, so we will stop here today, and when we meet next week, we will begin with verse number 132. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. For next Sunday, satsang, our subject will be coping with pain. Clearly, as you can see from what we studied today, if we just know we are the Atman, no pain. But until we have known we are the Atman, the pain of the body, the pain of the mind is kind of become our pain. So we'll have to find a way to cope with it. And next Wednesday, we will continue with this study of Vivekachudamani as well. So we'll conclude with a prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto you.